Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew Rowe, and I am the CEO of the Campaign for Wool in Canada and its parent organization, the Canadian Wool Council, the only national nonprofit that links the entire Canadian wool value chain from producer to consumer. And I'm really pleased to see in our group today that we've got many of those representatives of different parts of the value chain. We've got some artisans, some spinners with Serge. We've got some retailers. So it was Christine, Jolene representing the producers, and so forth. So we've got a lot of representation right here, and of course that is our mission: is to knit together this diverse group of individuals and companies. You may recall, you maybe wonder, where did the Campaign for Wool come from? Well, 11 years ago, on a windy pier in Pictou, Nova Scotia, Their Majesties the King and Queen launched the Campaign for Wool as an initiative to remind consumers of the natural, sustainable, and biodegradable benefits offered by wool. Over the years, we've really grown our operations and our scope. We began similar to the campaign in other countries with a focus on branding and marketing. That is still a big part of what we do. But over the last number of years since the creation of our wool plan, which, for those of you who haven't at this point read it, it is available on our website. Please take a read. It's great bedtime reading. You will never read a more comprehensive document on the wool industry in Canada, and it also gives great insight into the work that we do and the directions that we take. And with the creation of that plan, it was a renewed focus on developing specifically opportunities for Canadian wool. So we educate on wool in general to the benefit of anyone who works with any kind of wool, but then we also work diligently to develop opportunities for Canadian wool and the Canadians who transform it, which is many of you on this call today. Joining me today is a familiar face to many people who've been following our work. Jane Underhill, of course, is our researcher extraordinaire, co-author of the Wool Plan itself, and many and all of the other research that we've put out there: the carpet plan, the upholstery plan, the shearing plan, and in addition to running her own wool consultancy, also helps me at the International Wool Textile Organization and helps to run our delegation there. And she'll be speaking to some of that work as well. So, but welcome, Jane. Uh, the Spinning Yarn Speaker Series, of course, was created at your request to give better insight into the work that the campaign is doing across the country, and the work of the Canadian Wool Council to develop the wool industry here specifically, as well as to be able to hear from some amazing business owners, from people who are working, from producers, people who are working throughout the value chain, and seeing what makes them tick, what makes their businesses thrive, and how they're working to advance the cause of wool. We started, I think it was, well, at least a couple years ago, where the first session of the year is a good chance for us to kind of take stock on where the industry is headed, some of the trends, and also to be able to report back on some of the international meetings we've participated in, and to report on our work from last year and where we want to sort of take the industry in 2025. So that is usually we have some really fascinating extra speakers. Today, unfortunately, you're stuck with me and Jane, but we'll try and make the best of it and keep you as entertained as possible, while hopefully giving you some insights into where the industry is headed in Canada as well as around the world. I think maybe to start off, we'll do a quick review of our annual report and just looking, reviewing the work of the campaign for the last year, and then we'll dive into some updates on from the most recent international meeting of the International Wool Textile Organization that the Canadian Wool Council holds Canada's seat on, and some updates from myself and Jane, and then we'll have an opportunity, as always, to dive into questions. So feel free, if you're worried about forgetting, if you want to just put, if if you've got questions coming up as we're presenting, if you want to throw them into the chat, we will get to them all during the question time. But and then if you would like to ask your question on camera, again, if you could wait to save that to the end of the presentation. But looking forward to hearing from you all, and I hope you find this an informative update. So I'm going to start by sharing our plan here. Some of you may have seen this. We just recently um, put this out. It's available on our website. You can download a copy. We do have a very limited number of print copies. So if for whatever reason you do require one of those, please get in touch with us and we can send that off to you. But obviously the most cost-effective and quickest way to get access to all this wonderful information is via our website, campaignforwool.ca. And I'm sure Lydia will pop the link to the report in the chat. So this is again, last year was our 10th anniversary, so it was a chance to sort of reflect back on our origins, some of the big events. This page, obviously, it shows images from the last visit of our patron, but we wanted to reflect on why we're here, and that this quote is actually from a very early speech of His Majesty's, went back when he was Prince of Wales. Um, uh, Early in the history of the campaign. But I think it really just sums up his passion for the fiber and why the campaign was launched to begin with. But also it's sort of a call to all of us to echo this message and to help explain the wonders of wool to anyone who will listen, families, friends, retailers, because the more people who understand just how amazing wool is, the more people will appreciate the value and choose the products, which are ultimately going to be what drive the industry forward. So some of the highlights in this report, again, looking back on 10 years, we'll be able to, I'm going to go through this very quickly. So again, if you want to linger on some pictures, there'll be the opportunity to do that on your own time. But there's some amazing images over the years of all of the different events that we've been able to put on, the different projects that we've undertaken. And it's really interesting to see sort of how far we've come. So in that time period, for those who haven't seen this year's Fabric of Canada films, two really amazing stories. One from Alberta with an amazing Alberta ranch and who works with an Ontario-based manufacturer to create really the most incredible saddle pads. So perfect for the cowboy on your list. And the second is again reflecting on Montreal and the amazing design and production that still takes place to this day in Montreal. It's also our first French language film. Don't worry if you don't speak French, there are subtitles. But again, profiling two really great companies of Savard de Soie, who make a second generation family owned business in Montreal with locations in five locations in Eastern Canada, and who specialize in only natural fiber. And then as well, the business of our board member, in full disclosure, and an amazing partner, Joe Barra Jabber and his business Milo and Dexter, who are really pushing the envelope in terms of creating new products made of 100% Canadian wool. So excited to see those two films. They're short watches if you haven't taken it in. We also in this we're going to touch briefly on our capsule collection with Holt Renfrew, as well as the teddy bears, the new wool prize, and some of our achievements there. Big highlight was the renewal of our patronage. So His Majesty renewed for at least 5 more years the patronage of the campaign. So it just shows his commitment. Some great images from that windy. If you're ever wondering what the windy pier in Pictou, Nova Scotia looked like, there it is. And you may remember Jillian there from Lismore Sheep Farm out in Pictou, Nova Scotia, from our 10th anniversary speaker series last year, where she talked about that experience. And again, just some of the great partnerships over the years, Royal Winter Fair, bringing sheep to unusual places. I wanted to linger just on some of these numbers, just to, again, to get a sense of the impact that we've had over the last decade. So again, over $1 million invested directly in the Canadian wool industry. I think there's sometimes a misunderstanding just because we promote wool in general and sometimes work with brands outside of Canada that our money is being spent outside of Canada. No, it's like other than attending international meetings, it is every all the money that we raise, and we are a nonprofit. We rely on donors and on industry partners to be able to pay for all of our work. It's all spent in Canada and invested in developing opportunities for the Canadian industry. So again, over $1 million over the last 10 years. We got two rounds of federal funding. So again, before we'd come along, no one, I mean, again, maybe someone on the call might have longer memories than I, but certainly the from the federal government's perspective, they hadn't invested in the Canadian wool industry in decades. So getting sustained and growing support, it's still relatively small from where we would like to see, and we would certainly like to expand it beyond just supporting marketing initiatives. But the fact that they are at the table and paying is a great sign of engagement in this industry. Here's a list of some of the amazing research that I talked about that Jane has led on our sides. The point of sale kits for those of you who sell your wool products, who run wool shops. Who are this is a series of professionally produced point of sale collateral. You can see one of the signs there. There's tags. I've still got some from last year. There's all kinds of materials to help you have access to sort of professional information and branding, and to be able to help you to educate your consumers on the wonders of wool. So that's something that we distribute for free. We've sent out 2,000 of those kits over the years, and hope to send many more going forward. Some of the tangible pipelines for transforming Canadian wool into high value added products, which again is a real focus of our work, are two Canadian wool collections. But beyond the collections, both of those companies, one in Toronto, one in Vancouver, now offer Canadian wool as an option in their offerings, and that's something that didn't exist before. So, and it's an ongoing offering. So beyond the collections that we put out that we get the media attention, you can have any of their designs created in Canadian wool. So something to consider for any of you who may have some bare patches around your home that you're looking to fill. We would be delighted to work with you on that. And you can sleep well knowing that a portion of every one of those rugs, a portion of that money is invested right back in our work developing opportunities for Canadian wool. We mentioned the IWTO. We're going to get into that a bit, but I think one of our achievements beyond joining it, again, Canada was the only wool growing country of any note in the world that wasn't part of this group. So it's always very important, especially when you're in a small and a niche industry, to be able to hear from other people who are facing the exact same challenges as you around the world. And that's what the IWTO has given us, as well as an insight to the overall global industry. Canada is a small player when it comes to wool. We hope to be a growing one, but the lessons that we've learned from our IWTO colleagues are invaluable. And being able to bring the global industry to Canada for the first time ever, it's a 95-year-old organization at this stage, 94, and they had never before had a meeting in Canada. So be able to 2 years ago, when bringing them to Montreal, was a really special opportunity, and again something that we hope to repeat. And we hope to actually have quite a large Canadian delegation at the upcoming IWTO meeting in Lille, France, which we'll get into. Just again, some of the we are really a national organization. You know, I'm based here in Toronto. Jane and Lydia are in Montreal. We have other partners that are in every region, every province in the country, and that is shown in terms of our activations and our work. So just a list of some of the cities where we've done Wool Week activations and activities over the years. The sheep aspect of it is always very important to us, both bringing sheep to the city. You see the picture there of our founding chair, Kimberly Newport Mimran of Pink Tartan, and that's in front of the ROM in Toronto a few years back when we had some sheep there. But it's very important to us to be able to educate urbanites on the wonders of wool by bringing the sheep to them, but also, as you see above, bringing them to the city, bringing media, bringing retail partners, and to understand how the wool is harvested, and dispelling a lot of the myths that are out there about shearing, for example. And so this is something we do annually at an annual shearing event, which helped to celebrate the wool harvest. And of course, we've been very fortunate over the years to have two visits by our patron. Again, I'm not going to dwell on most of this, but please do take a look through. Again, see some of there's our spinning yarn summary. As well as our sharing day. Again, are some of the events that we've done to bring together partners. Our wool trade mission. So this is something we're going to be doing again. So for those who might be interested, some of the commercial collaborations, again, really developing tangible opportunities, high value add opportunities for 100% Canadian wool and those beautiful rugs. From Chief Janice George and Buddy of the Squamish Nation out in British Columbia that are just to die for. So again, also for if you're looking for that fill that bare patch in your home. This year's Hope Renfrew Capsule Collection is a chance for us to showcase fashion wool, of which, Canada, we do produce some, but it's also a chance for us to show off our designers. And you can see the star of the collection this year was this jacket that was made in Toronto by the design house Smythe, but using cloth from a heritage mill called Loch Erin in Scotland, and then some beautiful knitwear from Canadian designer Line, and very special project for our 10th anniversary, the bear. So this is an annual. Whole Renfrew creates a bear every year to raise money for the World Wildlife Fund, also a patronage of the Kings, and specifically for WWF initiatives in Canada. This year, the bear got a little sweater, which was made at the Parkhurst Mill here in Toronto, which sadly is a victim of Toronto's growth. The mill will be closing. We're sad to hear. So if you did get one of these bears, that may be your last chance of getting a beautiful piece of Parkhurst Canadian-made knitwear. The other element I wanted to highlight was. Before I just get into a quick IWTO overview and pass it over to Jane, is this year, again, we're always looking for ways of how we can lift up the industry and encourage those who are working with wool. And on that note, we created this year, in partnership with the world's oldest wool guild, the Worshipful Company of Woolmen, our inaugural Canadian Wool Innovation Prize. And this was a $10,000 prize to support companies doing really interesting work with Canadian wool. And we had two winners. One were Brandfelt, the makers of those saddle pads you saw in our Fabric of Canada film, and the General Bean, who do these amazingly adorable needle felted animal kits. So again, just another way that we are supporting the industry in wraparound support, and often in the way that they need it most, which is cash. So the more that we can do these sorts of things, the better. And just some summaries from the meetings this year in Australia and in Istanbul, which I'll get into in just a moment. I also wanted to reflect on, again, when we look at why we were created originally and our overall impact, media promotion driving the conversation about wool in Canada has been a huge part of our work, and that bears out in the numbers. So we've hit the population of Canada many times over the years. Our collective media impressions of the last 10 years were 224 million. So very a great and a range of media outlets and so social media as well. Last year alone, we generated 17 million, almost 18, which we actually found a little on the smaller side this year. So we're hoping this year to have an even bigger impact. So those are some of the amazing opportunities that we've taken on over the year. Just to quickly focus on where we will be heading. Again, I think we're going to be looking more at investing in skills training and skills training opportunities across the value chain. So as early stage as producer education and shearing education, all the way through to sort of retail and design education. On the design education side, building a network of both interior designers and architects, the people who have the ability to spec wool in a commercial and an industrial projects. We want to be able to know who all those people are and equip them with what they need to be able to get wool on those purchase orders, which are going to drive the industry. And also something we're looking at for November is to have build on the success of that Montreal meeting and to have a national wool conference just for the Canadian industry. We'll bring in some international speakers, but what amazed us about that meeting in Montreal was we had 26 Canadians at that meeting, and it was the first time that we had all been in the same room together, and there was so many benefits that came from that. And so we've been looking to see how we could replicate that. And this is going to be the year where we're going to have a national wool event. And so we're stay tuned for more details on location and speakers and things like that. But we're looking for that to be in November when hopefully there's not a lot else. Well, there's always things happening, but a time where hopefully a lot of people can take a day or two out and attend. So those are some of our exciting priorities. I'm going to just quickly talk on some of the trends that we saw at that last international meeting, and then I'm going to pass it over to Jane to get into some of the nitty-gritty on some of the working groups and how Canada is advancing both our agenda, but also supporting the global industry. It's interesting. The global wool supply has really stabilized in the last 20 years, which is, it's not going way up, but it's not dropping anymore. So it's still lower than it was 20 years ago. But but we've noticed a stabilization trend, which is good for producers to be able to, and for manufacturers to have a stable supply. Strong wool volumes, though, which is, of course, the majority of what we produce, are the highest they've been in 20 years. Unfortunately, prices still remain stubbornly low, but there is some upward movement there. So we're cautiously optimistic that you will start to see some of those benefits trickling down. Some of the trends we heard about in Istanbul, there's an increase in nearshoring, so less reliance on, for example, Asian supply chains. So looking more for us in North America to Central and South America for manufacturing when we can't do it ourselves. So some of those orders that would have been traditionally filled by China, more and more are being filled in Central and South America. So we're seeing an increase in that. But we're also seeing simultaneously a massive increase in regulation and rules and trade restrictions. So five times the regulations globally since 2023. So it's like 3,000 pieces of regulations that have grown. So it is getting harder to do this international work, which should also be of interest for those who are manufacturing in Canada, that that benefit of outsourcing to other jurisdictions it's becoming less and less appealing for many brands. On the issue of brands, one of the interesting stats we learned about was about 63% of brands are nowhere near where they need to be to meet their climate change targets for 2030, and they're having to accelerate those efforts, and that is an opportunity for wool to step in and with its amazing credentials around sustainability. You don't have to be a follower of politics to know that the change in administration in the United States is very concerning, not just for the wool industry, but for everyone. A trade war and huge across the board tariffs will hurt us, but they will also hurt our entire agricultural and manufacturing sector, and could potentially tank the global economy. So this is something that we're following very closely, and we're working with our colleagues at American Wool to try and do our small bit to keep the border open, keep trade flowing in that regard. But if anyone has a more direct line into Trump, please let us know, and we would be happy to exploit that. The Just briefly about Turkey, that was a really interesting opportunity because they have a very ancient wool industry, but also a big focus on textile and clothing manufacturing, supplying 12% of all of Europe's clothing comes from Turkey. So we met with a lot of different manufacturers and brands that are producing in Turkey, and that there's about 25,000 producers there and 52,000 manufacturers. So it's a huge manufacturing hub and a big user of wool. So that was a really interesting insight. Some of the other learnings that we took from the presentations was Woolmark emphasizing a new nature positive wool initiative, which is emphasizing the responsible farming practices, the how wool reduces carbon footprints, the high standards of animal welfare, and so that is a big thing to look for. And Woolmark is, of course, the leader in many of these initiatives because, as the representatives of the Australian industry, they are have the resources to be able to take on huge in global media projects. We found there was a really interesting Turkish manufacturer called Yunsa that they have a huge production capacity, or producing sometimes 40,000 meters of wool fabric a day. So that was really interesting to learn about. Another big area is around the Green Book. I think Jane's going to get into this in her presentation, but having global industry standards around reporting and sustainability is very important for being able to continue to sell our products and to be able to validate the claims that we make on the green side. So that is a global effort currently being led by Italy, but involving all of us, including Canada, to be able to both set and document those standards. And then just in terms of the nice to know, or the fascinating, I think one of the most interesting things that stood out about that session, or about that conference, was the announcement by Prada that they have a new contract with NASA to and Woolmark to dress the astronauts going to the moon in the next lunar mission. So wool can literally take you to the moon, which is very exciting to see, and a great marketing piece. Even if it won't be a lot of volume in terms of wool, it certainly makes for a great story of saying that, when you go to the frigid vacuum of space, the only fiber you have against your skin is beautiful soft wool. So that is an inspiring point for us all. So with that, I wanted to hand over to Jane to be able to speak to some of the working group efforts, and as well as covering off any of the other things I may have missed about the work in Istanbul and the important work that Canada serves to use those international forums to advance our agenda, but again, also to support these areas of common interest, like around sustainability standards, where we all benefit by having a unified global approach. So over to you, Jane.
Thanks, Matthew. Um, all right. Well, first of all, Matthew, congratulations on your 10 years of Campaign for Wool in Canada. You have done remarkable work, and it continues on, and I'm very pleased with the direction that all this is heading. I think we're seeing some really good traction. So today I have I'm going to do a quick rundown on some of the work of the working groups at the IWTO, and I'm going to leave time for questions at the end. So I'll buzz through, and then you can highlight things that are of interest to you, and I'll circle back. One of the things I wanted to start by saying is that our mandate at the IWTO is to advocate for Canadian wool grown across Canada. Our working group members, people who sit on those working groups from Canada, we believe have a duty to represent the uniqueness of the Canadian industry. And we also think that advocating for Canadian wool is also advocating for all small wool industries who are raising dual purpose or tri-purpose sheep. Canada's, as Matthew mentioned, Canada's profile is not unique. It has its unique properties, but there are lots of wool growing industries like ours out there facing the same challenges. They're working with strong wool, and we feel that our voice is important in that way. So one of the things we say to people in the working groups is that they are not there to, our working group members are not there to represent their own interests. They are there to represent all of the Canadian industry. And that's sometimes a challenging role because we sit at some big tables with some leaders of pretty big wool industries, and one has to have courage to continue to advocate for Canadian wool, and that's what the representatives on our working groups do. So I'll say thank you to those people. They are volunteers, they put their time in, and this is not a light contribution. There's a lot of heavy lifting to be done. And Canada, because we do not, you know, give large sums of money like South Africa or Australia or New Zealand to the IWTO, we contribute our efforts in labor, in our research, and in our administrative services, I guess is the best way to say it. So let's dive in. The Product Wellness Working Group, that is chaired by Monica Ebert. Some of you might remember Monica. She was a guest speaker on our Spinning Yarn Speaker Series last year. She is a Woolmark representative. The Product Wellness Working Group, they're focusing right now on wool performance testing of technical materials and sportswear. They're also undertaking a wool sleepwear study. They focus almost exclusively on apparel, wool for the apparel industry, which is disappointing for us. We do have some next to skin layer appropriate wool. Mostly we are a strong wool industry though. We are hoping that the Product Wellness Group will start working in collaboration with the Wool Interiors Working Group, which is doing their own, I guess, product wellness tests in the strong wool sector. We tentatively have a new representative from Canada who's going to be stepping into that working group, and we're hoping that that individual will lobby for Canadian wool and having more strong wool investigation in the product wellness group. Second is sustainable practices led by Geoff Kingwell of South Africa. This is an important working group. They are leading the PEF legislation that's happening. I'm going to give you a PEF report at the end. So if you're not familiar with that term, we're going to cover it. They are also leading the charge on the IWTO Green Book, which is a collaboration aimed at enhancing transparency in the sustainability supply chain. That working group also had a report from an organization, ZDHC, which stands for Zero Discharge of Hazardous Chemicals. The ZDHC has what they call a roadmap to zero. And if you're interested in learning more about that, roadmaptozero.com is their website. And they describe themselves as the world's largest database dedicated to enabling safer choices of chemical products for textile, apparel, and footwear industries. So they've published an online list of chemicals in textile production that they believe should be banned or reconsidered. And they also offer a roadmap for enterprises, industries, organizations to transition to using chemical-free processes in textile production. I would encourage you to check out their website. It's quite interesting. And I believe they're based out of India, or a lot of their research is based in India, which is heavily impacted by chemical processing. The Wool Sheep Welfare Group. I apologize. The Wool Sheep Welfare Group. We're not used to saying wool sheep in Canada. We're just used to saying sheep. This group is led by Dr. George de Cook out of South Africa. And this group follows migratory disease and forecasts risks affecting the global sheep population. Right now, they are quite focused on blue tongue and the migratory path of blue tongue across the world and its rapid movement. I spoke with George after his presentation, and he says he does not believe that blue tongue is something that is a high risk for Canada. But if you're interested in learning about blue tongue or other diseases or parasites affecting sheep in Canada, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency has a pretty detailed website. You can go there and you can look up any of the diseases affecting ruminants, and they give you a really good understanding of how those diseases are impacting the Canadian flock. In the next few months, we are hoping to appoint a new person for that wool sheep welfare group. We are hoping for a veterinarian or somebody with agricultural research specialized in ruminants to join that group. If anybody has a recommendation of a potential candidate, could you please reach out to Lydia, please? That would be really helpful, and we're happy to approach the individual and give them an idea of what Canada needs in terms of representation, but it'd be really helpful for us to have our flock, our agriculture represented at that group. And finally, the group that I'm most involved with is the Wool Interiors Working Group. That is chaired by Carol Siebert of Creative Matters, the carpet company out of Toronto, who is a close collaborator with Campaign for Wool Canada, Canadian Wool Council. The Wool Interiors Working Group has had a lot of success this year. We've published a cleaning and care guide aimed at the commercial wool industry. So aimed at people who are in the distributor, retailer, reseller space so they can better communicate how to care for wool carpets. A bit of a myth around that wool carpets are hard to maintain. They're not. And we have a care guide that can help demystify that. We also did some hexapod tests. Hexapod tests are done through WoolSafe, which is an organization in the UK specialized in carpet and textile testing. We took two carpets, one 100% wool, the other one 80%, 20% wool, and we tested them, rub tests, durability tests, over 8,000 rubs, which is about equivalent to an 8-year wear and tear test on carpet. And in the long run, there is no benefit from having 20% nylon in your carpet. 100% wool carpet stays cleaner, retains its bright look and its color depth better than a carpet that is mixed with nylon. Now, there's lots of reasons for including a nylon blend in carpet. We're not going to get into them here, but it was positive to see that a wool carpet stood the test of time better than a carpet with a nylon blend. Going forward, we're undertaking two more studies. One is a second hexapod test where we are calling it the like versus like test. The first test, we did not have sheep breed wool the same in each of the carpet samples. In fact, we did not know the breeds from which the wool came from. We went with carpet samples that were similar in color and age and construction. Now we realize we'd like to go a bit further and we would like to make sure that we are testing same breed versus same breed. So that's the next round of upcoming hexapod tests. And we are also starting a wool bedding study in collaboration with the UK. And that will be testing all sorts of things related to wool bedding, including temperature control, moisture control, and microbe control. So that's a rundown of the working groups. I did not speak too much to the retail working group because the retail working group, the wool retail group, is headed by Peter Ackroyd. It is not a functioning working group. It's more Peter gives a report at each conference. All I would say is that congratulations to Peter Ackroyd, who is the new director. Matthew, correct me if I'm wrong, director of Campaign for Wool. He was
Global
appointed
chairman, if this
global chairman. Oh, you just popped up on my screen. Sorry.
suitably grand. Yes. Yeah.
Global chairman. So congratulations to Peter. He has his thumb on the pulse of what's going on across the world in terms of the wool retail market. We are pushing strongly for him to start representing a little bit more of the strong wool. He is married to Merino. We hope to change that. And lastly, I'm going to give you a quick summary of PEF, Product Environmental Footprint. What is that, you ask? It's the method for measuring any product's environmental impact throughout its life and into disposal. The IWTO has identified, or its member nations have identified, that this PEF coming out of Europe is problematic for wool because there are generally a lot of misunderstandings about the inherent properties of wool. And why do we have those misunderstandings still in this day? We are a small industry, so we sort of lack the voice, we lack the funding necessary to promote all of the qualities of wool in a way that deeply impacts consumers. We are up against other kind of niche things like recycled polyester industries who have much deeper pockets, a lot more power at the table. We also have a lack of funds to do deep research on wool comparable to what some of these other sectors are doing. And finally, we don't have a lot of wool recycling around the world in place yet. And that is because wool lasts so much longer than synthetic. The need for recycling hasn't been as prevalent, and wool composts. So when your wool sweater does wear out 50 years down the road, chances are it's not going to be damaging to a landfill site like a synthetic product would be. That said, we cannot discount chemical dyes or treatments that was done to the wool product to make it, to put it into production. So the ability for wool to 100% compost without any negative impact on the environment. It has not been studied what some of the dyes or superwashes, what those effects would have. This is why the Sustainable Practices Working Group, under the direction of Dr. Paul Swan, is undertaking the Green Book. That is a proper life cycle analysis of wool that will look at what is the true effect from sheep to shop to landfill or to compost or to end of life use or end of life treatment. It's reevaluating how a life cycle analysis should look for wool. We cannot be using the same life cycle analysis on wool as we do on petrochemical products. That's it. That leaves 15 minutes for questions. Not bad, eh?
Fabulous. Thank you, Jane, and thank you for the shout out of congratulating our new global chairman. I suppose we should also pay tribute to our outgoing global chairman for the Campaign for Wool, Sir Nicholas Coleridge, who has done so much for the industry over the years, and we wish him all best in his new role at Provost of Eton College. So, which is probably a little bit different, but I'm sure keeps his days very engaged and interesting. So that's a bit of an overview. Obviously, we could spend hours just diving into all of the different developments and trends and things like that. So we want to be conscious of the diversity of our audience and not bore you to death completely, but give you some hopefully some interesting trends and activities and give you a better sense of where where we're steering the Canadian industry, but also again how some of these trends are sort of steering us on a global level. So would love to open it up to questions. As I say, Lydia, if you could help moderate, but we've got you can pop them in the chat. You can also put up your hand and do and ask live. Yeah, we're here to advise and help. But I guess just before we do that, again, thank you to all of those who continue to follow our journey, all of you here on the call today, to those of you who also financially support our work. It is so important. We do, again, it's important to know that despite our grand origins, we weren't born with a silver spoon in our mouth. We don't have access to the crown jewels. Every dollar that we raise to develop the industry in Canada is raised from industry partners and individuals like yourselves who believe in the work that we're doing to develop opportunities for Canadian wool and the Canadians who transform it. So if you aren't already a contributor, please consider. So let's move into some questions.
Okay, we have the first question from Christine Laframboise. Hi, Christine. Can the Council share insights on the new EU GPSR? Have retailers of non-raw wool products seen any significant impact so far?
Well, Matthew, do you want to address that or would you like me to address that?
I'm delighted for you to address that.
All right. Hi,
I
Christine.
know you have some recent experience with exporting, so so maybe this might touch on it.
Christine, where are you? I can't see. There you are. Do you want to unmic and ask your question a little more fulsomely, please?
Yeah, sure. I'm just curious how non-raw wool retailers have been impacted. I guess my question is, have most gone to the trouble of hiring this responsible person to certify their products in the EU, or are most people choosing no longer to ship to the EU for their products? My understanding is that once the wool has been transformed into yarn, which is most applicable for me, or any other product that is non-raw wool, it is no longer eligible for the exemption under the EU GPSR.
Okay, thank you. Unfortunately, that is a question that I don't feel I have enough information to answer at this point. I haven't spoken to many people in that space. Matthew, perhaps you have something to contribute, or there could be other people on the call who can share their experience.
Yeah, again, I'm not as familiar on the technical side of this, but I think it's certainly something that we can circle back with you on, because we are in touch with the EU Trade Office in Canada, and so this could be something that we raise with them and get a better understanding for what they're hearing from Canadian exporters.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
But you found that some of your products when you're sending them over are getting sort of assessed for duties outside of the free trade agreement?
Yes, because I'm not able to certify the origin and the chemical composition of the treatment that's done to the product after it's been processed from its raw wool origin. What I'm seeing across other retailers in my space is that they've put a pause on shipments to the EU as they try to determine the impacts to them and how to get certification for importing into the EU.
Yeah, no, let's circle back with you on that because I think that's a very important point. So we'll talk to the EU and probably maybe drag you along to a meeting if you're available to help speak to your specific issue.
Thank you.
Okay, more questions are coming in. Francois, I see your hand. Just give me a second. So we had a question from Julia. Are there any new or innovative wool products emerging from the wool industry that you're particularly excited about? Any recent trends or breakthroughs that stand out on top of what you've spoken about already?
Well, I mean, we could do a whole session just on innovation, and maybe we should because there are some really neat applications. I think the Prada announcement was really exciting. So seeing wool's application in human space exploration is pretty sort of high on the chart. But I also, and I'm a bit of a hometown boy. I'm still so proud of our winners for the Canadian Wool Innovation Prize. And I think they're two very different companies and two very different products. But again, of adding value for Canadian wool and being able to show like the saddle pads, for example, again, that is it's solving a problem because you need a saddle pad when you're riding a horse, and the existing ones, the way they're made, have a sewn ridge on top, which is actually quite uncomfortable, and many of them are traditionally made by synthetics. Not traditionally, but at least in the last few decades. And so the innovation that they've been able to achieve by creating a one-piece pad that all behaves as one piece. There's no sewing lines. It's a great addition to that space. And so they have models because I'm learning all different, there's all different styles of saddle, of course. And so they have several models to fit Western style riding, but they're starting to move into English applications. And so we've actually been talking to some partners in Europe that are very interested in that Canadian wool product. So please continue to watch this space around on developments there. I think you're also seeing more and more people starting to understand the benefits of wool used in interiors applications. So, like felts, which brand felt also makes designer felts. So being used as wall panels to control sound, to control air quality, because having just wool hung up in your room will actually improve the quality of your air and eliminate volatile organic compounds um, uh, like benzene and formaldehyde. So I think that's also a really interesting trend. So yeah, I mean, maybe I'll hand it over to Jane if you have anything to say on that one. But I know we've got lots of questions coming in.
Oh, there's lots of innovations happening. I wouldn't pick one. I'll pick one, wool rope. I think that's pretty cool. But there's lots. I think you can go on Instagram or social media and see a lot of new innovations happening that I haven't even come across yet. So it's all exciting.
Francois, would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
Thank you. As I said before, I'm in England and I'm very pro wool and very pro 100% products. But one of the things that I'm sort of struggling with since watching your talk here is we don't get many Canadian products. I I don't know where you would buy Canadian wool from, and I also don't know. I don't see many things in the shops which say made from Canadian wool. So if I go to one of the say wool brands like Lovecrafts or Wool Warehouse, which sell wool from all over the world, I can buy Malabrigo wool, which is from South America, but I don't know of a Canadian brand. Um, I have some Canadian wool because one of my wool friends in Canada sent me some, but I don't, I don't, what I'm trying to say is, where is Canada marketing themselves?
Yeah.
Because you've got the king, but
Yeah.
I don't think he's doing a very good job for you.
Well, he's got a couple countries he has to represent at the same time, but that's a very good point. But you're in luck, Francois, because on this very call we actually have the top producer of Canadian yarn, or one of them, I should say, because we have many different retailers of different styles of yarns. But Leah Little, Leah, I'm not putting you on the spot, so if you don't have to jump in. But the Briggs and Little Mills is one of the oldest woolen mills in Canada, or the oldest woolen mill in Canada, and I would say the largest manufacturer, correct me if I'm wrong, of Canadian wool knitting yarn. And I know, Leah, that you export all around the world to some availability of your products in the UK, or maybe we can connect Francois and you directly to load up that shipping container of yarn that she'll be ordering any day now.
Hi, Francois. How are you?
Hi.
Um, we actually don't ship out of the country much, and typically it's logistics. The cost of shipping our product is it's just not feasible. And that's really kept us back from doing so.
But do you have an agreement with one like Lovecrafts or Wool Warehouse, which stock your products? No.
No, no, nothing,
Well, something.
unfortunately.
Why?
It's never been something that's we've looked into, I guess. I'm new to the office. I've only been here since 2018. I've taken over from my father-in-law. But my husband is a little, and I honestly I can't say that they've ever looked into doing that. So I'll put that in my notebook and see what we can come up with.
Thank
And
you.
perhaps actually this could be a good target for our next trade mission. To be able to meet with some of the companies that you were mentioning, Francois, and talk
Yeah.
about maybe bring some samples along with us and talk about how they could stock some Canadian wool products. So, but thank you very much for raising the point and for joining us in your around your dinner hour to join our little presentation here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have time for maybe one or two more questions. We had one from Katie. Are there any programs, government or otherwise, that help to bring new equipment for wool processing, from initial cleaning to weaving equipment? Yeah, that's the question.
I know before jumping in, I know Jane, you've worked in this space a bit. Do you have so? I could say just off the bat, equipment um, it's often a little more limited, and it can vary depending on the provinces. But I know maybe I'll just pass it over to Jane to speak to that. The federal government has been we haven't had a lot of success on the equipment side, but maybe Jane, you can speak to some of the other examples.
Yeah, Katie, what province are you in?
Hi, sorry. I'm in Ontario.
Ontario.
Yeah.
Certainly, I believe that there are economic development offices that would be more than willing to support you. I've heard from other people that Ontario has had their challenges in supporting equipment purchases. I know that other provinces have pretty robust programs for that, but I would suggest that you start looking into, on your provincial website, start looking into economic development and innovation offices. Your municipality will likely have one. If you're in Toronto, I would also look to any type of organization in Toronto that supports small business and equipment acquisition, and they can probably help push those requests through to different government departments or lenders.
Okay. Yeah, I was just
Don't be
wondering
discouraged.
sorry.
Don't be discouraged.
Just in terms of tariffs and duties on the larger equipment that's coming in, because it is available to purchase, but a shipping container full of it, plus all the additional fees that come with it, the price tag is quite high.
It requires a solid business plan and a map of where you want to take your business. And if you have, I believe, if you have that really well illustrated, you will find support for the project and the money will follow. It's not easy, but start with a very clearly defined business plan, and then it won't be hard to convince people that there's merit for your project.
And from your experience, what would be the best equipment to bring? Like, what's the
Oh, in wool, tell me what you want to do, and I'll tell you what equipment.
no, just in terms of the industry itself. I know you're really promoting strong wools. Would it be better for processing the strong wool or finer wool for the garments? Because I know the garment industry doesn't have any equipment to process fine wools and make it into fabric thin enough to produce something, that we can brand as more of a luxury wool.
Well, it's a pretty deep conversation, but
Sorry.
oh, it's okay, it's all right, it's good. What I would focus on is just remembering that the Canadian industry is Canada's a vast country with relatively few sheep. Our sheep industry is in pockets across the country, and so depending on where you're located, you would look at sort of the scope of the industry in your area. Start with that and then think, what is the size of equipment I would need to service it? For you, for your passion, for your interest, it might be more along the mini mills, which could give you a semi-worsted spun yarn. It could be very fulfilling for you creatively. You know that your price point is going to be a little bit higher with the mini mill system. Or if you're really willing to invest the millions, you could look at a larger facility, whether that's for scouring, spinning, weaving. But that again, you got to look at what you want to do, what type of lifestyle you want with that business, and how how much are you willing to invest in it. Mini mills seem like a good solution for regional processing. They're striking a nice balance between cost and output. It just depends what you want to do.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
And certainly your volumes as well, because again, it's being able to Jane's absolutely right. Having the right knowing the kind of business that you want and the kind of product that you want to produce it will be very helpful. But happy to take this offline, and if you want to circle back with us, maybe we can have another call, a one-on-one call to talk about some of the programs that we're aware of.
Sure, thank you.
Well,
I'm
sadly,
conscious that
looks like we're out of time. Matthew,
yes.
sorry to cut you off. Did you want
No
to
worries.
wrap this up?
Sure. Yeah. So I just want to thank, I mean, this was such a great attendance today. I'm glad to see so many people interested in our work. And we, again, I just wanted to thank your interest, your passion for wool. We're all sort of proselytizing in the religion of wool. So go out there and evangelize is my call to you. And look at ways, again, if you do have the time or you have the money, to get more involved in different aspects of our work. Again, we've got volunteer opportunities both with the IWTO, but also domestically on policy opportunities. We also again, we're always looking to look at new projects, new ways of showcasing Canadian wool and the incredible companies that work with it here. So if you've got an idea, please don't hesitate to get in touch. And I just wanted to thank again. I did a quick glance through, and we had multiple funding organizations on our call, including Briggs and Little, Alberta Lamb Producers, Liz Peed and Liz Peed Weaving, Lampierre, I should say, for your support of helping us to do what we do. And if you are considering to make a contribution, we're happy to send you a little wool gift as our thanks as well. But thank you. Stay tuned for new and exciting. Well, actually, I guess Lydia, just to close it off, maybe I'll hand it back to you to talk about what they can expect next month for our February Spinning Yarn Speaker Series.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a really exciting webinar planned for February 20th. We'll be announcing it on our social media in the next week or so, but we'll have a really interesting panel on farm to fashion movement in kind of southwestern Ontario. So we'll have a wool grower, a farmer, a weaver, and a designer retailer, all women. Very interesting conversation about Ontario wool. So I'm sure a lot of you will enjoy that. So stay tuned for that. So it'll be February 20th, which is a Thursday, also noon to 1 Eastern time.
Fabulous. And I think as well, I forgot to mention, you're hearing about all our work at the IWTO. We have a big opportunity this year, the IWTO Congress, which is the bigger of the two annual meetings. Think, hundreds, usually it's about 300 to 400 people representing the global industry, is a bit closer and accessible this year. So it's in France, in Lille, which is just in northeastern France, about an hour fast train from Paris. And we're hoping to get a quite a large Canadian delegation at this. So if you are interested in joining us, please do email Lydia to express your interest. We're compiling our list of delegates. Now, if you register through us, obviously you get a lower price than the general public. So thank you again for joining us all. Thank you for your support for wool, and we look forward to seeing you at the next Spinning Yarn Speaker Series. Have a great day, everybody. Choose wool.
Thank you.